All right. All right. Welcome to another episode of Real Hawk Talk. Sorry for the technical delay for those who've been waiting. We had an issue getting the show started without Brian, and we managed to figure it out for Seahawks bloggers. Maybe not the best at tech, but.
Well, I just want to clarify this, Jeff, for the viewers that are listening in late that still stuck with us. I believe 75% of this Hawk blogger team works in technology, and we still couldn't figure out a Google Hangouts start. So, Jeff, the blame is not on you. The blame is on all us techies who could not figure it out.
I'm actually blaming Jeff. I feel like if I was in charge or in control, I could have figured it out way faster. But
I actually agree with you. I think you're probably right. I think Brian set it up to rig it, so we need him.
He wanted to feel needed.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I
think he rigged it. Yeah. That's why he kicked us all out and started again. But alas, we're finally here and we're able to get show. It's crazy. It's episode 45 now. And I remember writing Brian an email like last year telling him that we need to start a Seahawks podcast. He was hesitant at first. 2 years later, we're going with this thing. You guys have joined now. We got building like crazy. It's pretty cool. I remember just sending him that email blindly. Never thought much of it, and now here we are. So today we got a nice full lineup. Brian's going to join later, but we got our two opposite ends of the spectrum tonight. We got Evan Hill, who's maybe the more positive, emotional version of this site, and Nathan Ernst, the analytical, the logical, the probably most reasoned of all three of us. So we should have a nice, well-rounded show for you. Brian, again, he's going to join later. And again, thanks for everyone for joining tonight and hanging on to the show. I want to start. I missed last week's episode. I was able to catch it last Friday. I was away in Austin, Texas. And I was also surprised, Evan, you kind of wrote off the Chargers. I don't know if you're just being super positive towards the Seahawks or you didn't buy them. I didn't see it that way going into that game. So were you surprised with the result? Let's start with that.
I was definitely surprised, number one. And number two, even more so, I was completely wrong. Like I get a lot of things wrong, but I got this really wrong. I underestimated Phillip Rivers and that Chargers offense and how it's perfectly designed and executed to defeat Pete Carroll defenses. And it's so incredibly frustrating every single time we play the Chargers. They just dice us up. They do their little ticky-tacky, dump off to the running back screen. They're not afraid to dink and dunk all day long. And that's what a Pete Carroll design defense is, is designed to give you. It's no deep balls. And we didn't even really succeed at that. There were quite some deep balls that the Chargers had on us. So I think overall this game was super frustrating for me. I think honestly, what's most frustrating about Sunday's game was the offensive performance. The first drive coming out of the game, they scored. Russell Wilson to Jerron Brown. Chris Carson was balling. Things looked really positive. They looked like they were continuing off their production from previous weeks, and things really fell apart. Obviously, the defense collapsed in the first half, although they rebounded in the second half. But it was a really frustrating game, and I'm really disappointed with how Russell Wilson played, how the coaches called the game, the offensive coaches called the game. And yeah, that was a long answer to your very short question, but I'm extremely disappointed. I'm extremely frustrated, and I'm very surprised. And I probably shouldn't have been surprised, but nonetheless.
And again, at the opposite end of the spectrum, I thought you had a really reasoned, smart take. I think a day after the game when everyone was kind of freaking out. I know you have a smile. You've been probably the smartest one all year about where this team is.
I don't know about that.
I know you like these compliments, but yeah, I thought you had a really good take on Twitter the other day. I don't know if you want to expand on what you said.
Yeah, I mean, this Chargers team right now is sitting 5th in DVOA. They're a tick behind the Rams in offensive DVOA, ranked 3rd. They're a legit team, and I think it was just clear that, they came into Seattle. I think that you could tell that the crowd noise did affect Phillip Rivers. He wasn't able to get them into everything that he wanted to. They had a bunch of missed kicks, and they still won by 8 points. And I think it just was really obvious the difference between, the Seahawks team, which is kind of a plucky fringe playoff team, and a legit good team. And I think that was just really on display.
And Evan, you mentioned the frustration. So given what Nathan said and given your surprise on the Chargers, were you more disappointed in how Seattle played, or is just them the fact that a lesser talented team lost to a better team?
It's a little bit of both, but coming off the past couple of weeks, people will be like, yeah, the Lions and Raiders were really bad, but I think that's unfair to the team because like the Seahawks still played really well on both sides of the ball and on special teams in the previous weeks leading up to this game. So they were clearly on like a good trajectory, and they just didn't execute. They just looked unprepared on offense for the rest of the game after that first series. And one point I want to bring up, and it's super frustrating to have to say this, and some fans are going to probably get mad at me for saying this, but I was at the game, and I've been to a lot of Seahawks games in my very short lifetime of 23 years, and I can tell you without a doubt that was the worst game I've ever been to where the fans did not support their own team. Fans were yelling their absolute asses off while the Seahawks were on offense the entire game. I know I hate to bring this up, but it was so frustrating for me. I couldn't walk away from that game on Sunday without being like, what happened? Russell Wilson was constantly having to shush the crowd. They had to put shush lettering and words up on the screen. I don't think that's typical of Seahawks fans, so I'm not going to act like this is like a consistent issue or anything like that, but it was very prevalent, especially in that game-tying drive where, Russell Wilson missed David Moore, or they didn't complete the catch, but that was very prevalent on that drive, and it was just so frustrating to watch. So you asked me a very short question, but I'm very frustrated overall.
Well, you hit on a good point that their home field advantage isn't what it used to be. I don't know if that's the fans. I don't know if that's the confidence or other teams have figured out how to play them. But they're 1-2 this year in Seattle. They're 2-6, I believe, in their last 8 home games.
Yeah,
this is a team that used to go 8-0 at home pretty regularly.
Yeah, and that's one of the big takeaways you reminded me of. Thank you. That I was discussing with Brian on Sunday is like, do you remember when the Seahawks narrative in like 2013 and 2014 was this team can only win at home, and they couldn't, or they could win away games, but they struggled. And it's just crazy to see how much that dynamic has shifted. Nobody wants to hear it, but I'll say it. I'm a straight shooter 80% of the time. Our home field advantage is not what it used to be. And I think that's clear. I don't think that's up for debate.
I don't want to spend too much time on it because there's so many interesting topics coming out of that game. I think for me, my big takeaway of that game is just everything you could have feared about the Seahawks coming into the season. Let's go over the big ones. 1, Brian Schottenheimer was going to screw up the offense. 2, the defense couldn't generate any pass rush. They weren't going to be very good. They looked pretty bad in the preseason. The first half, they looked pretty bad in that game. And a run game, once the team got behind, without Chris Carson, they were really ineffective. And pretty much every fear that you could have had coming into the year showed up in that game. I don't know if that's a one-off against a better team, but I think the Schottenheimer thing and the running on 2nd and 26 and there was a lot of questionable game management and clock management, and so a lot of fears that we haven't seen in the last couple of weeks, even in that Rams game where they screwed up the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
there were a lot of problematic coaching decisions. Russell Wilson didn't play great. It just brought up a lot of old things we haven't really talked about since the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to steal the show real quick, Nathan. I'm sorry. The one thing that really, one of the main points I took away from Sunday is that this Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer, run the ball down their damn throats offense is, in my opinion, cool and entertaining, and I love the aggressive mentality of it, and it's just, I think it can be fun football when you're good at running the ball. But somebody on Twitter, I don't know if it was Aaron Levine, I don't remember who it was, noted on Twitter that this team, and we've known this for years, this offense is not designed to come back, when they fall behind in the score. So if a team goes up and puts 14 points on them, the Seahawks start freaking out. They start losing their commitment to the run. This team is not designed, I think, to come back from 14 points down. Whoever tweeted it on Sunday or Monday was like, once the Seahawks get punched in the face, it's like they can't recover. It's like there's no plan B. There's no backup plan. It's very hard to see this offense rebounding, once they get punched in the jaw. So that's a frustrating limitation of this offense, and I feel like is a frustrating limitation of Pete Carroll. I don't understand, if you're going to be so aggressive in the run game, why you can't be super aggressive over, in the passing game also. Like, enough with, if Russell Wilson gets a sack on first down, okay, he takes a bad sack on first down. The Seahawks gave up on Sunday. They gave up the next 2 plays.
They've been doing that all year.
But that's so frustrating.
The biggest play of the game was maybe that 3rd and 15 that the Chargers picked up, right? That big play to Keenan Allen where it looks like Quill blew coverage, right? And then the next play was, I think, a big touchdown run by Melvin Gordon, right? So yeah, but meanwhile, Shoddy's out here running the Holmgren 2nd and 20 draw play.
Yeah, you're right. It just hurts. It's super frustrating to watch.
It's weird though, because you say that they lose their commitment to the run, and for whatever that's worth, but then they have that bizarre 14 play drive, and they are still running on those 3rd and longs, and they just kind of, I think you said it right, that they don't have a plan B. If they're able to do the stuff that they want to do in the way that they want to do it, then everything is good. But the second that things kind of get weird on them, they lose their mind. They stop running play action. They let all this stuff kind of get in their head, and they don't seem to have a plan. And you can see that, I think a lot of this is shoddy in that the passing routes, the passing concepts are not very advanced. I don't think this is a high-tech offense. And so they get into these passing situations where they feel like they can't run play action, even though they can and they should. And their playbook gets weird, and Russ is dropping back and doesn't look like he knows where to go with the ball. And it just gets really ugly really fast.
And yeah, you couldn't see that more in some of the weird clock management and game management mistakes they continue to make. And there was that drive at the end of the first half where they didn't take any shots to the end zone, and they set up for the field goal, and they're running a 5-yard play that uses a timeout. And they had that 14-play drive that took up 8 minutes when they're down 2 scores. And is that more on Shoddy? Is that on Russ? Is that on Pete? Because this stuff is basic, and they're making these silly mistakes almost every week.
I firmly believe that's a Pete Carroll issue. We have seen this clear flaw over Pete Carroll's tenure in Seattle and even in USC. He has a strong history of poor game and clock management. When it comes to the end of the half, using your timeouts effectively, designing plays to maximize time, they get too conservative. I hate it. Okay, I believe it was at the end of the first half on Sunday where, they were within range and they played for the field goal, and I think he missed it. I don't remember exactly what happened, but playing for the field goal is super frustrating in the situations, especially when Russell Wilson is in that area of the field where he has, 40 yards to work with. That's really Russell Wilson's hot zone. That's really where he's dangerous. It's so frustrating to see them play it conservative there. It's so frustrating to not see them run play action on those drives. It's just, they're playing not to lose. And it's just so conservative, so Pete Carroll style ball that it ends up hurting them. It's that simple.
Yeah, those 2-minute situations, I think you can really tell the difference between Shoddy and Bevel. Not that Bevel was great, and not that Bevel was able to do a whole lot outside of those 2-minute drills, but the entire time that Bevel was the OC here, you get to the end of the half or the end of the game, and they would explode down the field every time. And I think we've only really seen that once in that in the Bears game, towards the end of the Bears game, and that's just completely gone. And now you get these, Shoddy wants these kind of dump offs and to take what the defense is giving, and wants to kind of go down the field 6, 8, 10 yards at a time. And we keep seeing now where they're not moving fast enough, and they're all too willing to settle for a long field goal. At the end of the half, they got a 44-yard field goal from Janikowski. They had an opportunity to maybe run a really quick play. Like the announcer kept drawing the out. He's like, oh,
Yeah, right.
look, they're way too far back. They're way too far back. Just run a quick out. You can get 5 free yards here. And they don't do it, and it's not like a 44-yard field goal is all that long, but it's not a gimme either. And yeah, it's just, I think Pete Carroll has obviously some really fantastic qualities. Like he knows how to coach a defense. He knows how to coach a secondary. I think that you can give him a lot of credit on a lot of things, but he's been bad at some of these detail type things, challenges, timeouts, all that kind of stuff. And now he's paired up with Shoddy, and you're seeing some of these worst habits kind of get amplified a little bit.
Yeah, that drive you mentioned, they didn't take one end zone shot, and they I don't know if they keep talking about Russell audibling to like runs up the middle in 2-minute situations, and like Mike Davis will clunk his way for 4 yards and make them use a timeout or waste 20 seconds, and it's just bizarre. And the weird thing is like they're using like 73-year-old Carl Smith as like their game management expert. It's like every team has these like high-end analytics guys, and the Seahawks have Carl Smith. I've always wondered why teams don't have like Madden experts in those situations. I've always wondered that, but yeah, it's been weird. And I think Nathan hit on a good point. I heard Jake Heaps talking on the radio today, and he mentioned the same thing with Bevel, how those drives at the end of the end of the first half and the fourth quarter have completely gone away. He thinks it's the way Shoddy's calling plays, and they're doing these quick little chunks. And he said Bevel used to move Baldwin around really well in those situations, and now they're just running guys out of the same route and out of the same position, and they're not having that success. And look, you look at the Denver game, the Chicago game, this game, there's chances to win in all these games. They haven't had that fourth quarter drive that Russell under Bevel was so good at. And that's why Russell's had some bizarre games, and you wonder, is this a Shoddy issue? Are they not? We know they're not maximizing his strengths, because what do they have? 10 play action passes this week?
Yeah, they only ran out like 21% of their plays.
Yeah, which is absurd. And I guess we got to move to the Russell conversation, because that's been dominating the local conversation. I think we'd all agree this wasn't his best game. He made the pick six, the big mistake. He was inconsistent after what looked like a really good first drive. He kind of got going in the fourth quarter after the pick six. But let's start with you, Nathan. You've had a pretty good eye on Russell all year. What was your evaluation of him in this game, and what do you think kind of the issues are holding him back right now?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to actually go back and watch the all 22 on this, but just during the game, watching it live, like you could see he wasn't confident about where to go with the ball. A lot of times he took a couple bad sacks that, weren't great situations, but then he went and made them a little worse. There were times where his accuracy, was kind of nowhere. It was just overall, from what I could tell, it looked like a pretty poor game. But again, like, it's hard to know. It's hard to say how big of an influence the coaching is here, and it just doesn't. It would be one thing if we hadn't seen him do some of these things really well in the past and consistently in the past, but the fact that like the whole he looks like a different quarterback, and not in a good way. He looks maybe even more timid than he'd been in the past. You're not seeing those, he used to have these like fuck you moments, and those are gone. Like, he could, for all his pros and cons or whatever, he could take over games when he had to. And that's a lot of the reason why Pete Carroll's formula has worked here, is because he has this whole thing, right? Just give me a chance to win at the end, right? He doesn't necessarily want to blow you out. He doesn't necessarily want to score a bunch of points. He wants to have a chance at the end. He wants to have a chance on third down. And Russell has been able to make things happen in those situations and take over games in those situations. And it's just gone this year. And I don't think Russell forgot how to play football. This is the guy that like led the league in touchdowns a year ago. This is the guy that's played really well at times this year, But then they get in these situations where they fall down a little bit, or they, like Evan, you were saying, they get punched in the mouth, and suddenly they look like they don't know what they're doing out there anymore. And so I think, yeah, he didn't play well. Like, there's no way I think that you can grade him particularly well off of that game, but I don't think it's just a rest thing.
Yeah, I don't think anything you said is unfair, Nathan. I would say I really hate how kind of black and white the narrative was this week. It's like if we criticize Russell Wilson, that means like we all hate him and suddenly he's a really bad quarterback. Like, that's just not true at all. There's I do think Brian brings this up a lot. There's a protective fan circle, I think, around Russell Wilson. And I think that's true to an extent. I think it's pretty clear Russell Wilson played a very poor game on Sunday. I think Russell Wilson's, biggest defenders would say that. The two areas I really, and I pointed this out on Twitter, I really want Russell Wilson to work on, and I just don't feel like he's progressed in the past few years on this, is number one, he takes bad sacks. He takes a lot of bad sacks. This year, it felt like over a couple games, maybe he was starting to throw the ball a little bit better, or get rid of the ball a little bit better, but it's starting to feel like there's no real progression being made in that area. So number one, stop taking bad sacks. And my point number two is kind of correlated to that. It's take the easy play. Russell Wilson loves to go the home run play and, sometimes make risky throws and hold on to it a little bit too long and get sacked. I'd love to see him go with the Phillip Rivers route sometimes and just dump it off to your running back. Take the short passes. It's okay. You don't always have to gain like 25 yards or whatever. And you don't have to hold on to the ball for 10 seconds. So I echo a lot of what Nathan said. In the Pete Carroll offense, in the Pete Carroll like game plan and how he wants to play football, I really, how should I put this in a logical way? Paying a quarterback $30 to $35 million a year, what Russell Wilson is going to want, in a year, and maybe he's justified, maybe he's not justified in asking for that. Paying a quarterback $30 to $35 million a year in a Pete Carroll offense, I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm not saying get rid of Russell Wilson. I'm not saying let him go to free agency. I'm just saying if you have Pete Carroll in the fold and you have Russell Wilson in the fold, the identity there is a little bit at odds. And we've talked about this a lot on the Hawk Blogger podcast. So we don't have to rehash the entire thing, but this Sunday just made me think of the impending negotiations that will be coming up in a year or so, because Russell Wilson's contract goes through 2019. So if you want to start looking at extending Russell, we're talking in, like early 2019 about that. So I think overall he's played actually a pretty good season. It's just frustrating to see inconsistency in certain areas.
Yeah, it's rare to see him miss a play like the one with Jerron Brown, where the guy's streaking down the field. That's his throw. That he had time in the pocket. He had that. But why the fuck is he not running? Why does he never run anymore?
It's not accountable.
Yeah, I think that's on the coaching. Like they've taken away his play action passing. He had 10 damn passes last week. It was like that Chicago game or the Denver game. They finally figure out how to use him. He has the perfect quarterback rating. I think it just puts a ton of pressure and onus on him when you run this run pass bullshit every time. You don't let him get going. You don't let him develop any rhythm. It puts a lot of pressure on him, especially against a really good defense. And Gus Bradley adjusted well to him. They knew how to play him. I think coaching is a big part of this, and I think they're putting, by taking away his rhythm and his volume, they're putting more on him, because every pass means more.
Yeah, and so I was going to say that. I get the sentiment that Pete Carroll is going to suppress quarterback numbers, and you're never going to have like that 5,000 yard, 50 touchdown. Like, you're not going to see a Mahomes type year under Pete Carroll for like any quarterback ever, probably, right? And so I get the idea that, like, why pay one if you're not going to get that kind of production out of it? But Pete, I think, actually ends up putting a ton of pressure on his quarterback by giving them so few opportunities to succeed and such high leverage opportunities to succeed when they finally get them, right? Like, you might be able to get away with a rookie quarterback in a Pete Carroll offense for 3.5 quarters. But Pete wants to play a game where he's totally happy, going for like a 14 play drive down 2 scores. And now you're in these situations where a quarterback has to, like, they have to score, right? All these like last drive comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks that Russell Wilson has, it's because of how Pete wants to play. And if you want to put in a rookie quarterback and ask them to make some of these game-winning drives, like, I think it's underappreciated how, like, I'm not a big fan of clutch, but like when they've put it on Russ has delivered up until this year, right? With Bevel and everything, when they were like, okay, 2-minute offense, let's go, boom, they flew down the field basically every time, right? And that was a huge point of contention and frustration last year because that was the only time the offense would show up. But they were gangbusters, right? Like his fourth quarter numbers were unbelievable. And I think if you try to swap him out and say, well, you're never going to have these prolific passing years under Pete Carroll, I think you're just going to end up asking some Blake Bortles type quarterback to lead you on game-winning drives, and at the end of a game, and you're gonna end up like the Jaguars, who, yeah, they had one great year, but where are they now? Where are they usually at, right?
Yeah, it's hard to argue because you start to think maybe they've turned a corner, and the old P way is playing down to competition, and they blew the hell out of Oakland, they blew the hell out of Detroit. Maybe you think, okay, maybe these guys are finally not relying on that Pete ball, that fourth quarter, but to see what they did in that game, it seemed so frustrating.
You mentioned something else too, that like, going up against the Gus Bradley or defense, I mean, he runs something really similar to Pete, right? And I think I saw some stats that Russell has not played particularly well on against the former Pete defensive coordinators, and maybe that's something about Russ, and maybe that's something about them having some kind of formula to play him. But I think it also speaks to Pete, right? Pete wants to go out and play his game and be better than you and beat you up and run down your throat and win that way, right? And so even when he goes up against a defense that you would think he would know pretty well how to attack, you have these kind of games where it's like, oh no, we can't run. I don't know what to do, right? You would think that they would come in with a really well-defined game plan, and it just didn't look like that was a thing.
No, and it was really frustrating because that first drive, I don't know what you guys were thinking. When they go down and they score the field pretty much in the same fashion they played those last 2 games, I'm like, this team's fucking awesome. These guys can kill everyone now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what Nathan said. When the offense is clicking and they're the ones punching the opponent in the mouth, it's fun to watch. Like, I think even the anti-run crowd will be like, no, it's fun to see them gain like 5-6 yards a carry and, play smash mouth football when it's working. I don't think anybody will dispute that it's fun. It's just when they get punched back in the mouth, they have no recovery. They have no recovery when they get down points. There's no plan B. And this is not a Brian Schottenheimer issue. This is a Pete Carroll issue. We have been seeing this for years. So, oh my God, I'm frustrated.
Yeah, they just looked low energy in the second and third quarter, and you haven't seen that pretty much since the beginning of the year. Russell looked tentative. The team just looked until that fourth quarter after the pick six. They looked low energy, and you haven't really seen that the last couple of weeks. And I think that's why everyone was so frustrated with their offensive performance. And maybe everyone was starting to think, okay, their DVOA rating was so high, and they've been kicking the crap out of those other teams. So just how do your thoughts change now coming out of this game?
For me, I don't think they've changed a lot. I think that there was a really big. I had a unfortunate series of events that kept me off the podcast last week, but my whole thing going in that Chargers game was that Chargers game was a huge pivotal game for them for all the reasons that I talked about, right? Like the Chargers are really good. They got them at home, and like if they could have beaten that Chargers team or made it a little bit more competitive, I think that would have told you a lot about this team. But they didn't, and they weren't particularly competitive for most of that game. And so I think that they are kind of what I mean, I don't know. Some people were talking about this team as like a 2-win team or a 4-win team, and those people were wrong. I mean, a couple weeks ago when they won their 4th game, right? But I think they pretty much are who we thought they were. They're maybe a little pluckier than we expected at the start of the year. I think they're probably a better overall team. That defense is looking a lot better, but they're not. They're not the surprise team of the year. I don't think. Maybe they'll still jump up and get a playoff spot or something, but I don't know that this team has any kind of real contention chances. And I think that you saw that when they ran up against a legit contender like the Chargers.
Yeah, I think maybe my view is a little bit more positive than Nathan's per the tradition of this podcast. I think I think the Seahawks are going to be inconsistent, and that's what they are. They played horrible this week. They played like trash the first 2 weeks. They had some good middle games against some so-so teams. I was talking with Brian about this on Sunday. I would not be surprised if the Seahawks walked into LA and beat the Rams. I'm not kidding. This team is so wildly inconsistent. When they are on it, they are on it. But when they get punched in the mouth, they get punched in the mouth and they have no recovery. So if they can play Pete Carroll football and be fairly, error-proof on Sunday and make pretty much 0 mistakes, they can win on Sunday. But it's going to be an inconsistent year. It's going to be a frustrating year. And hopefully we begin to see, a more consistent identity form towards the end of the year.
Yeah, that's fair. And Brian did predict them to beat the Rams a couple weeks ago, so it's good. He's remaining consistent. Yeah, I remember the first week we did the show this year. I remember the thing I said. I was excited to watch a team where I had no expectations of them. Everything was kind of house money this year. And I got totally sucked in the last couple of weeks, and maybe that's what made the last game so frustrating because I'm like, okay, this is a legit playoff team. They're actually good. And I felt extra gloomy coming out of that game on Sunday, even though I thought the Chargers would be really hard just because of how Phillip Rivers was playing them. I felt like it was the end of their playoff chances, not because they lost, because of the injuries. Because Chris Carson went down, TJ Fluker went down, Bradley McDougall, and a team we've mentioned the depth issues, and we've mentioned those 3 guys a lot as the guys who have really jumped off the page this year. I don't know if, given their schedule coming up and given that key home loss, I don't know if they can hang in there without those 3 guys. Am I off here?
I don't think you're crazy. I don't want to do the whole running backs don't matter thing. They don't, but we don't get into it. No, but the Chris Carson injury, he's very good. I think he probably is their best back. I think I think if you run him 100 times and you run Mike Davis 100 times in similar situations, you're going to get better results out of Carson. But it really bothered me how everyone on the team, this team that is always about next man up and all this stuff and no excuses, no whining. After the game, everyone was like, oh, well, we lost Chris. And then basically it was the impression was kind of well, it was impossible to do anything at that point. The offense can't work without Chris Carson. I don't know. That's weird to me. Yeah, he's important and Fluker's important and McDougall's important, but there was just this really weird attitude about well, Chris can do some things that, Davis and the other guys can't. Okay, sure, maybe, but you still have Russell Wilson, you still have Tyler Lockett, you still have David Moore, you still had Doug Baldwin, you still have an offensive line that's playing well. Why did that really take the wind out of their sails so much? Why? That's weird to me.
Yeah, and I had the same vibe. It felt like a funeral.
Yeah.
And Evan, I'm sure you don't want to touch on the Chris Carson thing because you've been going at it on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, just not to get too deep into the whole running backs don't matter discussion. I think nobody can change my opinion on this. Okay, maybe I will get a little bit into this discussion. Chris Carson, I think he's shot out of a cannon every single time he runs the ball. Every time he, takes a handoff. I think Chris Carson is a lot better than Mike Davis and obviously CJ Brosice and obviously Rashad Penny. And that's how I know, to me, that running backs matter.
I'm surprised you call Penny by his actual name after the Affetti.
What was that?
I'm surprised you call Penny by his actual name. I'm surprised you haven't nicknamed him.
I'm going to start calling him He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve our attention or our respect at this moment in time. But Yeah, that's how you know running backs matter, is that Chris Carson is better than those guys. I completely agree with Nathan, though. It was so frustrating to see the offense just it's felt like it was timed with Chris Carson's absence, although I don't think Chris Carson's absence was the main impact. I think the number one main impact that made the offense bad on Sunday was Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson played a bad game on Sunday. He missed throws. He made bad throws. He took bad sacks. He was inaccurate. He didn't hold the ball when he probably should have on some reads. I don't know if the athleticism isn't there. I don't know if the hamstring issue is still bothering him. I don't think he's still on the injury report for that. I don't know what it is, but I know a combination of Carson and Russell Wilson.
Can I ask you guys a question? I'm coming in way late.
Yeah.
So how much do you think that how much credit do you give Phillip Rivers for being like a really smart quarterback that, knew where to go, knew how to go after the defense, was making a lot of good choices? Like, do you consider that just a strength of Phillip Rivers, and how much credit do you give him for that part of the game, for that part of his game?
A ton. I think you weren't here for this earlier, but I was talking about it. Like, you could tell that the crowd was affecting him, and that he was like constantly, desperately trying to get like guys in different spots, or call, or audible, or change routes. And I think they even had like a delay a game at one point because he was trying so hard and couldn't get it. And so you could see like he was very clearly trying to, dissect the Seahawks defense at the line and change things around to get people in the right spots.
Do you think that other teams feel that way when they have to face Russell Wilson?
Probably not much.
No, I don't think that's his game.
I still don't know how much he's allowed to.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that if he was allowed to, that would be like that's the thing that's holding him back there, is that he's just not allowed to?
Potentially, if he's not doing it, that's obviously a gap in his game. Compared to like a guy like Phillip Rivers, and if he's not allowed to do it, then yeah, that's hindering him.
Do you think that it's possible that he's not allowed to do it because he hasn't shown the proclivity or the aptitude to do it?
That's a chicken and egg type deal, though, real quick, right? Yeah. Does he not have the proclivity? Does he not shown it because they won't let him? Like, that gets tough to figure out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he'll ever be at Rivers level. I think Rivers might be the best. Just the way Pete was talking about him and how smart he is. And I think Rivers was the first guy to really pick apart this defensive scheme. I think it was the second week after the Super Bowl year. I remember he just was able to just dink and dunk on them in that game.
I don't know that he stands apart from a Breeze, Brady, Rodgers.
Just the way, but Breeze and Rodgers really had trouble with this scheme earlier on.
Well, I think there's different pieces here. There's how a quarterback is able to understand what the defense is trying to do, manipulate it, get the offense in the most optimal situation against whatever the defense is doing. And then there's what are the throws that a quarterback is best at. And those are two different things. Sure. Rodgers, his natural tendency, he does not like dump offs. He does not like taking the short throws. He takes more sacks than the other quarterbacks because, similar to Russ in some ways, he wants the chunk plays. He will take the risk. He will take the sack in order to have a bigger chance to get the big play. Rivers, he is happy to get rid of that ball within a half a snap, as soon as, half a second after the snap, and dump it off to somebody. Brady is, he's willing to get rid of that ball really, really quickly. So there's also there's different preferences in terms of where they throw the ball. Rivers is definitely tends to be a shorter thrower.
I feel like guys like Brady and Rivers, when they throw those short passes, the receiver's in a much better position to do something with the ball.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of, and I don't think Russ has great timing or feel for those, dump offs and stuff like that. But it's always those where like, the back is just kind of floating out towards the sideline or something. When it feels like with Rivers and stuff, and I don't know if this is coordinator, I don't know if this is Rivers, I don't know, maybe it's running backs, whatever it is. It feels like those balls come out and like the backs catch it and they're going forward, they're going in the right direction, they're cutting up field, like, and they have space. And I've never seen that from Seattle's offense, and maybe that's a Russ thing, or I don't think Pete really likes dump offs either, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's got a defense that's
true.
designed to have the other team do those, so I don't think that's a big emphasis on their offense.
I think it's definitely a combination, and I would agree with you that the schemes have not generally had a lot of those outlets as a primary part of it. But when you're at the game and you see backs in the flat that are clearly part of the play and they're there as an outlet for Russ, that is, by the time he chooses to look at them, they're already covered up. Like, that is not something where he has already quickly gone through his progressions or pre-read at the snap, before the pre-snap, that he may need to go there quickly. And so he also does not put those backs in situations very often where they have a chance to run. So we've talked about this before. There's an area that I think he's got room to still grow. It also just may be his thing that, similar to someone like Rodgers, he's always going to prefer, he digs the long ball. He's great at the long ball. And maybe that's, you take that, you take the pros and the cons for him. But the reason I was asking about do you think other teams worry about that with Russell in terms of manipulating the defense and being smart, is like, I don't know that I buy that Russell will never be that, or that anybody should be able to claim. If you're a quarterback that's going to be in the league for 10, 15 years, and you put in the time that he apparently puts in, like, I don't think he's dumb. Like, I don't get that impression from Russell that he's not cognitively capable of, like, understanding the complexities. So to me, it is either that he's not being coached appropriately to be able to learn those concepts, or I don't know what. Like, maybe he doesn't spend his time there, or maybe, I don't know, like, maybe he's maybe he is challenged there. I don't know, but like, that's an area where I would expect after a while that he's able to do those things.
I think this is the case of him and Pete, like, amplifying a bad tendency. Like, I think it is definitely a Russ thing. Like, he wants those big plays, he wants to extend plays and try to get chunk plays and all that. And I think Pete's like right there with him, right? Pete doesn't want to do the dump off stuff either. I don't see a lot of like examples of like, they just don't have that kind of an offense where they're trying to switch into things and like they react to the defense. I think Pete's been really open about this, right? He doesn't want to react to other teams. He wants teams to react to him. And so I think it's a combination of kind of Russ's strengths and how Russ wants to play. And I think it's a lot about Pete too, and how Pete wants to run his game plan and doesn't want to be, I don't think Pete would want them running their offense that way.
One counterpoint I'd say there, Nathan, is there's been a lot of talk. Schottenheimer, even last week, there was conversation about how much control he gives to the quarterback, and Pete talking about the fact that this is the most control Russell's had, and giving Russell credit for changing plays at the line and getting the team into better plays. So it does sound like he's not only getting more latitude this year, but that he is showing some growth there. Maybe he'll just keep getting better at it, is the most optimistic perspective.
Yeah, you gotta hope so, because let's go back to Evan for a second. Did you predict them to beat the Rams, or you're just saying it's possible?
I think I definitely said to Brian in person on Sunday that the Seahawks are going to beat the Rams. Now, I'm not sure that was my rational fan side speaking, but the Seahawks are going to beat the Rams.
Okay, so is Carson going to play?
There's no way the Seahawks beat the Rams without Chris Carson.
Okay, I was about to ask you, how do you game plan that for me?
If Chris Carson isn't playing, God, I really think they're screwed. And anti-run Twitter will hate me for that, but like I really think there's a serious drop in talent between Chris Carson and Mike Davis and Rashad Penny. It's like Brian and I talked about this a little bit on Sunday. Sunday was Rashad Penny's opportunity. And he really didn't get that many snaps. Mike Davis really outsnapped him. And, I don't have the snap list in front of me, but I wish Rashad Penny had a better opportunity on Sunday to really seize the role. Pete Carroll said today he was a volume back. So why didn't we give Rashad Penny the opportunities on Sunday with Mike Davis struggling so badly? So we'll see. Chris Carson has to play for us to win.
And what about if Ethan Posick or Joey Hunt has to start a right guard?
That's a big problem. DJ Fluker is an underrated contributor to this team. I think you could make a reasonable argument that he was our best free agent pickup. And I'm just racking through my brain. Bradley McDougald, so he was already a Seahawk, but we extended him. Obviously, he's been amazing. But DJ Fluker has been a badass for us in the run game and in pass pro. He is somebody I think the Seahawks absolutely need to extend. I'm sure you guys have seen his interviews. He is so entertaining to listen to. He's amazing. I should get it. I should change my Rashad Penny jersey to DJ Fluker. I love DJ Fluker.
Please don't.
Why? Will that make it better?
That hasn't worked out well for us. You can only have one this Sunday. Fully healthy and able to play the whole game. DJ Fluker or Chris Carson, which do you pick?
Fluker.
Carson.
Fluker.
Now let's play. You can only have two. Fluker, Carson, and Bradley McDougald.
Fluker and McDougald.
You're so proud of yourself for not naming the running back. I can see.
I am. Because they don't matter.
Yeah.
Carson and Fluker.
Yeah, I'd go Carson and Fluker. Although Delano Hills looked better, but
You're going to take Delano Hill against the Sean McVay offense?
That's what I was about to say. I really
Dude, they had Bradley McDougald. It didn't make a difference.
That's the thing. They're going to F us up either way, Nathan.
That's true.
The best way to slow the Rams down from scoring is to be able to run the ball and keep them off the field.
That doesn't actually slow the Rams down from scoring.
Well, they scored in like 3 seconds last time.
This is my huge pet peeve with the NFL right now. I have one ask, like an analytics ask. It's not even about running backs, although I guess it kind of is, because can we start talking about defenses in terms of like points per possession instead of just overall points? Like you have, not that those Seahawks defenses weren't great, like they obviously ranked well in DVOA and all that stuff, but like Pete Carroll artificially like limits the number of possessions in a game by the way he wants to play offense. Like he suppresses scoring, and a lot of that is about he's very good at coaching defenses and had very good defenses. But like there's a difference between a defense like 20, if you give up 21 points on 10 possessions and if you give up 21 points on 20 possessions, those are very different things. And not that it's that drastic, but this whole idea that like the best way to keep like to play defense against the Rams offense is to run the ball and like limit the amount of possessions. Like, yeah, you'll lower the number of possessions. They won't have as many chances to score touchdowns. But if they're still scoring touchdowns at the same rate and you're just like also limiting your own possessions, it's
that's the thing that Pete would say that's he'd add to that. So one part of it is limiting their possessions for sure. From a time perspective, the Chargers had each team had one possession in the first quarter of this Chargers game, right? Like it was about as slowed down as you can get. That's part of it. And the other part of the equation is having more possessions than your opponent by creating turnovers and not giving up any. Like that's his equation. Like that's what he believes in. That's why he talks about those things all the time is, yeah, he's going to suppress scoring. You're going to have fewer chances, and that's going to help keep the score down. And he's going to bet that his team's going to end up with more possessions than you. And
he just wants that one chance at the end of the game.
That's
drive down and play for a 50-yard field goal.
And it's hard to argue with his results.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like this isn't like a bash on Pete Carroll thing, but I just think that like every other sport does a better job of this. Even baseball does a better job of this. Like it's you look at earned run average and it's like by outs. It's not like just how many runs do you give up in a game, right? Basketball talks a lot about points per 100 possessions. Football is still kind of dark ages on this, and it's a very basic thing.
Did you guys already talk about, like, were you shocked that the Seahawks didn't give up any points in the second half against the defense that didn't give up any points in the second half to that Chargers team?
I was surprised because of how badly they were getting gashed, like, by the running game. It felt like Melvin Gordon was running like for 12, 13 yards every time he had the ball. But I think they got pretty lucky in that. I think there was a lot of uncalled pass interference that got the Chargers off the field. I think there was at least 2 or 3 of those. I know everyone was mad that Phillip Rivers was whining, but I think he had a point on a lot of those.
We haven't talked about the refs on the show yet, but we'll save that. I was a little surprised. The first half looked a lot like the Rams game defensively, where they pretty much couldn't stop anything. They're getting burned on 3rd and 15s, and Michael Dixon probably had his best game of the season, and was pretty much all for nothing. And yeah, Bobby Wagner he made a big difference just from first half to second half. I think he kind of got a sense of what they were doing, and he was the biggest difference because the cornerback struggled most of the game. Tedrick Thompson, I don't see anything out of him, and the pass rush was non-existent again.
Folks, we have a Shaq Griffin problem.
Oh, are you finally acknowledging?
We have a Shaq Griffin problem.
What is this problem, Evan?
Brian, you know exactly what route I'm talking about. Who was it? No, I don't think it was Mike Williams. Who was it? Travis Benjamin, maybe? He absolutely burned Shaq on like a 30-yard, I don't even know what the route tree name is, but
that was Keenan Allen on the out and up, right?
Keenan Allen.
15.
That's who it was. God, it just felt like there were multiple plays in this game where Shaq just got burned. There were a couple plays where, he got lucky and his safety help and receiver didn't catch it, but there were multiple plays where I was looking at the replay on the screen and Shaq is like a good 5 yards away from the receiver. He struggled on Sunday.
Dude,
like
I can't let you just walk with that, man, like that. So when we're at the game, Evan literally is like in my ear, like, who was on coverage on that play, Brian, after Shaq Griffin like had a knockaway? He's like all cocky and like in my face. And now it's that Shaq Griffin's a problem. Interesting, dude. I respect that you're paying attention to how things are going. Look, my point is not that Shaq Griffin is a bad player, but I don't see a lot of evidence that he's gotten better. And I think there's a lot more evidence to say he's gotten worse.
Players don't change.
Explain that.
They don't change. Shaq Griffin's like never going to be a guy that like suddenly gets his head around. Like Ethan Posic's never going to be a guy that starts mauling guys. Like players don't change.
What?
Players don't change.
Players don't develop. Players don't change.
I mean, there's some development that goes on, but like players are who they are. They don't grow new skills or develop new skills and stuff like that. They get smarter. They make fewer mistakes, but players don't really change.
That's crazy, dude.
That's a take.
It's a take. I'm glad that you are a fount of takes. So that's fun. But
wait, are you talking like from
absurd.
An athletic perspective, or I want
players just tend to be who they are. Like, who are all these players that have changed so much?
Like I could name a ton of Seahawks players who have gotten better over the years.
You can get better. You can be more like sound in your scheme and understanding and all that stuff. But players don't really change. Like again, like Shaq Griffin, like beyond just the athleticism of him, right? Like he's never going to be a guy that is suddenly like a ball hawk and is getting his head around and like making all these plays on balls and stuff. Like he just is who he is, right? Like DJ Fluker is never going to. I mean, he's never going to be this like amazing pass rusher. He's doing well this year and all that, but like Easton Posick is not suddenly going to become a mauler. These guys just kind of are who they are.
Well, Nathan, you're getting murdered in the YouTube chat. I will say that. Let me be clear. Brent C. Knowles says, "Where's the numbers, Nathan? Where's the numbers, Nathan? Show us the numbers, Nathan."
What numbers? Numbers for
I don't
what?
know. It's just no, I'm just messing with you. I disagree with your take completely, but I think
Well, coaching could help that, I guess. Sweezy changed, but that's probably Cable's fault and not his.
Well, just like we were talking about with Russell earlier, is Russell ever going to turn into Phillip Rivers? Is he ever going to turn into like Drew Brees? Like, no, he's going to be, and like you're talking about with Aaron Rodgers, like Aaron Rodgers doesn't like to dump off, right?
Wait, hold up. Players don't get better. Explain.
I didn't say players don't get better. I said players don't change who they are.
I think he means
That's not what
stylistically.
you said. They said they don't change, and now you're walking back.
Players don't change. Yeah,
Wait,
Saying that players get better, but they don't change. Those are contradictory statements.
How
So
about
if you want to add qualifiers that they get better, but they don't change their core competencies, that's different than saying players don't change. Because by the simple fact of getting better, that is change, dude.
I mean, but they don't.
I mean stylistically.
Yeah,
Stylistically,
let him.
technique, like skill set, those things don't change about players. Like I said, they can get smarter, they can understand schemes better, they can learn little tricks and stuff, but like they don't change who they are, right?
I think that's well stated in the sense. I mean, guys, what Nathan is saying here is he's taking the DNA, he's making the DNA take, which is, you can be identical twins separated at birth and live completely separate lives. There's a lot of things that are coded into who you are that just it's fate. It is who you are genetically. And I believe that. Like, Walter Jones genetically is just able to do shit from the get-go that no one else could do. And when he improves from a really different base than what everyone else improves from. If we're saying that, I think you're right. But Shaq Griffin is a ridiculous athlete. If you're saying that Shaq Griffin is never going to be someone who learns the skill of being able to turn during a play and make a play on the ball,
He'll never change that.
I don't
He'll
believe
never
it.
change that.
I don't. He may not. I don't believe that's something that can't be learned.
It's just not how he plays. Players don't change how they play football. They may learn how to play football. They may learn how to be who they are.
You're totally wrong. 100% wrong. It is every single cornerback that has come into the Seahawks locker room has had to change the way they play. Step kick is not the way
the Seahawks have
every but let me finish.
Players they know will fit that, whose strengths fit that scheme. But the Seahawks don't draft anybody.
They change the way that they play the position, Nathan. They literally do change the way that they play the position.
Look, I mean, all right. Does Shaquille Griffin play cornerback differently in Seattle than he did at UCF? Yes. Or where was it? USF? UCF? Wherever it was.
Yeah, you got it.
Right? All right. Yeah, because what they were asking him to do and play off coverage and all the stuff that the UCF coaches were asking Quill to do in college, he was bad at. And the Seahawks saw that when you ask him to do specific things, he was good at them. I bet you money if you brought in those UCF defensive coordinators and defensive staff and asked Quill to play the way he did in college, he would look terrible. Like, there's a reason why Quill went in the certain round. And it's because there are things he does well and there are things he doesn't do well. And he's never going to change those things. He's never going to turn into like an off-ball player. He's never going to be a guy that like suddenly has a knack for getting his head around and making plays on the ball. Like, it's just not going to happen. And that's okay. He can still be a really good player.
So why did he do that in the second game against the Bears? Literally exactly that. Turned around.
One time in 2 years.
So that means he's incapable of ever doing it again.
All right, Brendan Ryan, the little scrawny shortstop for the Mariners, who was defense first and couldn't hit a lick, like once hit like a 450-foot home run. Like, okay, yeah, like he did that one time. It's in there somewhere, maybe, but like that's
okay. We're going baseball, dude. Then talk about Chris Taylor.
What about him?
How did he do in Seattle, and what is he doing?
I don't actually know a lot about baseball.
I'm
just going to say it right now. I can see the Chris Taylor argument. Maybe players change in baseball. I don't know.
Oh. Okay. All right. I'm going to let you off the hook here because I think I've made my point. I'm pretty happy with where I'm standing on this one. But
this is agree to disagree type of thing.
well, no, I think where Nathan and I see things the same way here is, yeah, there's certain fundamental traits that people have, and that and also forget sports, people in general management philosophy. And I literally just finished my last meeting of the day, but you play to your people's strengths. Trying to manage their weaknesses, not a winning strategy. You're not going to take a weakness and turn it into a strength. And I get that. I get that if this is a weakness of Shaq Griffin, is the ability to find the ball in the air and turn around and make a play, you're probably not going to turn that into a strength. At the same time, I absolutely not only have seen it in pro sports, I've experienced myself as, when I was a quote athlete, that there were things that as soon as you get the muscle memory of figuring out how to do it, whether it's learning a golf swing in a different way from a coaching, whether it's making a play in soccer, whatever it is, you get the muscle memory of doing something even once, it absolutely can unlock the ability to do it again and again. And sometimes it's just meeting the right coach, or having the right game and the right moment that makes that connection in your brain to your body, and things can change. Doesn't mean it's going to, but I think it's absolutely something that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. There's a couple more things I want to hit on before we go. Me and Evan were talking before the show, and this has become a weekly thing. But I think Evan wanted to get a Tom Cable rant off his shoulders. He learned something very interesting on Twitter last night.
Did you guys see the bullshit Jari Evans response to a random Seahawks fan on Twitter recently? Brian, Nathan, did you guys see it?
I saw it.
Brian, you saw it?
Sure.
This was just an abundant, clear affirmation of everything we've known about Tom Cable. Tom Cable is bad in all forms and everything he does. Nobody can tell me Tom Cable is good at anything except for one thing: convincing very wealthy, smart executives, managers, team personnel that he is somehow good at his job. That is his one talent. He fools people. And I have to applaud him for it. It's an incredible talent. But basically, for all the viewers and listeners who are tuning in and didn't see this on Twitter, a Seahawks fan basically asked Jari Evans in a Q&A, hey, the Seahawks really messed up in letting you go. What happened there? I'm paraphrasing. And he was like, the Seahawks offensive line coach, word for word, did not want me there. This is Jari Evans, who was cut after playing or scrimmaging with the third team in training camp when the Seahawks signed him a couple years ago under Tom Cable. He had been basically outcasted to third team string, and Tom Cable was hating on him. And he went to New Orleans, signed with them, and balled out for a year or two with them. So Tom Cable's bad. This is your weekly segment that Tom Cable is bad. I give you permission to believe Tom Cable is bad. Tom Cable is bad. That's an important announcement.
Okay, that was one of them. The other one I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on, Bruce Irvin. I know a couple of us have gone back and forth on whether we wanted the Seahawks to sign Bruce Irvin. There had been a lot of buzz that he was going to come to Seattle once he cleared waivers, and he ends up in Atlanta. And apparently Ken Norton tried talking to him, but he wanted to go home. Is this a guy you really think the Seahawks needed to boost this pass rush, or is it something that we shouldn't spend much time on?
Hold up. Do we want to give the resident Tom Cable truther a chance at a rebuttal here?
Okay.
Brian?
What? Have the same conversation we're having every week?
Cable fan.
I think you guys are just entertained. I mean, I'm happy to repeat the same thing over and over again, that Tom Cable was absolutely horrible at coaching pass protection and selecting personnel, and that it was absolutely right for him to get fired, and that it was too late for him to get fired, and that he contributed maybe more than almost anybody else to holding the team back in 2016 and 2017, especially, and that he absolutely was he was a key aspect of unlocking Marshawn Lynch in the season before Russell Wilson came in, in 2011 and turning around the running game, which was atrocious before that point. And he absolutely did develop a 7th-round defensive lineman in J.R. Sweezy into a effective offensive lineman. And he did take James Carpenter and turn him into an effective guard. And
This is getting a little positive.
He
took all these players who went off to other places and got
a Pro Bowl
better.
center. And he did take Max Unger and move him from guard to center and made a Pro Bowl.
I don't know that one's true. Is it? Did Unger move under? Well, he was always a center though.
No, he was a guard.
No, I know, but like in college, he was a center.
I'm just telling you. So I know everybody wants things to be one way. Guess what, Republicans? Guess what, Democrats? Not everybody is one thing. People can be multiple things. I know complexity pisses people off. Tom Cable is not the source of all evil. Yes,
Actually, he is.
Actually, he is.
No.
Tom Cable is one thing, and it's horrible. He's horrible.
Okay. Good. I don't know why we keep talking about Tom Cable because he's not here. I care about what's happening now.
Therapeutic, Brian. It's therapeutic. He ruined my childhood. I need to get it out on a weekly basis.
All right, I'm gonna read Twitter for a while. You let me know when you guys are onto something new and fresh.
That's your weekly Tom Cable rant.
We had the Aikman one last week. I heard that one. That was quite a rant from Evan. This week was pretty good. But anyone want to hit on Bruce Irvin? Is it worth spending time on?
Does anybody know what he signed for?
I think it was $3 million.
Yeah, prorated.
Okay. Do we know if any of that was guaranteed, or are we just or I didn't see the numbers, so.
I don't know if it was guaranteed or not. Just a 1-year deal, 3-point-something million prorated.
Got it.
I mean, he would have helped this team. I don't know how much it really matters because, again, I don't really think this team is a contender. I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs. So, but they are kind of right there, and he's a guy that could have. He's not a difference maker, but he is a capable pass rusher, and you can't really have too many of those. And this team can use, 1 or 2 extra. So I think it would have been a help. It's not a big crushing thing. It's not like he would have turned the franchise around or anything like that. But yeah, it's a bummer that he ended up going somewhere else.
I actually disagree with that. Everybody on Twitter was like, bring back Bruce. And I understand the sentimental, fan emotion side of it. Who doesn't like Bruce Irvin? I love Bruce Irvin. He's awesome. But I look at it from this perspective. He's not a part of the future of the franchise. Of course, maybe a 1 or 2 year rental isn't a bad thing, but I think I would just rather see what we have in younger talent and let younger talent develop and take that risk, just because I don't think the Seahawks are winning the Super Bowl this year or next year. Surprise, surprise. They're just not going to. So I think I'd rather see what our younger talent can do. And I just don't see him as part of the future.
I don't like that whole, I want to see what the younger players can do. You know what? You can see the younger players, see what the younger players can do. You can see if they can beat out Bruce Irvin. And if they can't beat out Bruce Irvin, then, don't worry about it, right? 1 year behind Irvin, getting limited snaps, if they're not good enough, okay, then you play Bruce Irvin. And this isn't a team that's literally going to win 2 games, and maybe the math would be a little different there, but they do still have 25% chance of making the playoffs. Yeah. It does suck that they lost to the Chargers, but if you're going to pick a game to lose, you'd want them to lose the AFC ones, right? So they can still beat the Packers, they can still beat the Vikings, and have a pass to the playoffs. And if that's going to happen, Bruce would have been, a nice little boost along the way. So.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that take. I think my perspective is more, I'm just not sad. I think that they didn't sign him. I don't think it was a necessity by any means.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Bruce is going to add a ton, to be honest. I think Bruce is a very much a one-trick pony when it comes to pass rush. Either he's fast enough to beat the tackle, or he's not. He doesn't have counter moves. He's not a creative pass rusher.
So what you're saying is that he's not changed as a player, as a football player.
No, I think that's a perfect example of a player that has not changed. I think that's exactly what Bruce Irvin. He is an athlete and just does his thing. And yeah, I think he's a good guy to have on a team in many cases. And I actually love Bruce, but I would say that I'm much more interested in Jacob Martin getting snaps. I think Jacob Martin had one of the only legitimate pressures at crunch time in that game. Yes, we had a couple sacks, but I definitely would not want to see Jacob Martin lose snaps to Bruce Irvin.
I always thought Bruce was a little overrated. I think one-trick pony is a good word for him. Maybe I blame it that the two guys I wanted Seattle to draft that year were Melvin Ingram and Chandler Jones at the same position. And those guys are like Pro Bowl, all-pro kind of players, and Bruce is still like just a speed rusher. But yeah, I think getting Martin more snaps, not the end of the world. I guess
Never remember.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can never remember. Did they trade back and pass on Fletcher Cox, or did Cox go right before them and then they traded back?
I think Cox went with the slot they traded out of.
Yeah, that's right. If that's true.
Yep.
So that's 3 pass rushers they could have. Okay.
So would you rather Fletcher Cox or Earl Thomas?
Earl Thomas.
I mean, why
No,
not both, though, right?
It's a different draft.
A different year. That's 2 years later.
Yeah, I would say that's different drafts. So
that was a different Eagles player that they took Brandon.
No, that was Brandon
Graham.
Graham. Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Okay, anyway, every outlet in the world does these midseason grades or midseason awards or whatever. I don't want to spend time on that, but how about this? That we'll end the show on this. What's one thing, it's halfway point of the year, what's one thing you really want to watch in the second half of the year? We know what this team kind of is. They're not going to win the division. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. They're probably an outside shot at a wild card with a crazy hard schedule coming up. So what's one thing you really want to focus on in these final 8 games?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I want to see evidence that Brian Schottenheimer can do more than just run the ball. And just expand on that just a little bit more. I think that the total lack of ability to adjust to the game and against the Chargers looked like a fireable offensive coordinator, like after 1 year. Like that bad. I thought it was a horrible game for an offensive coordinator, and showed no ability to adapt or be creative or change things. So I think that is a real issue. And if this team is going to have any upward trajectory, it needs to have an offensive coordinator that has upward trajectory. So that's something I'd like to see in the second half of the season. I'd actually like to see them fall behind in a game and be able to get into it in a way that looks like they're not completely fighting themselves by passing the ball along the way.
Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's been mine all year, is just the shoddy experience, and I mean, continuing to see how that goes, and just all the things that Brian just said. Like, can they fix that?
Yeah, mine is on the defensive side of the ball. It's somebody I've talked a lot about, Trey Flowers. 5th round pick out of this year. He's quietly been starting 8 games now, and we haven't seen a ton of mistakes from him. I think he has a solid foundation to build upon. I want to get more tape on Flowers. I want to see what he is. Is he a starting cornerback moving forward? Is his potential even higher than that? What's the secondary going to look like over the next few years? Is it going to be solidified in a Shaq and Trey Flowers duo? What's that going to look like? I'd also like to see how Justin Coleman finishes the year, just because I think it'll impact what he gets on the open market.
I'll stick with you on that. I'll mention 2 other players. You guys both mentioned Shoddy. That was going to be my answer. Rasheem Green, who looked incredible in the preseason. We've barely seen anything out of him, mostly because of injury. Pass rush is such an issue for this team long term. I really want to see something from him. The preseason wasn't a fluke. And another guy's Tedrick Thompson. We kept hearing about all these plays he was making in practice, and PFF gave him those crazy high grades. I haven't seen him do anything. He can't make tackles in space. He doesn't make plays on the ball. If I want to see if they need to draft another free safety because Earl's not coming back. Face safety is so important in this scheme, and Thompson's looked bad against every capable offense. So I want to see something from him. One play.
One tackle. It'd be amazing to see him make a
space,
tackle.
Interception, something.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if you guys talked about it, but people talk about Earl against the pass so much, right? He covers sideline to sideline and denies passing lanes for quarterbacks. I don't think people realize how much he kept explosive rushes from going farther than they did. And I think in this last game, it was so obvious to watch when Melvin Gordon broke through the linebacker level. Tedrick was not catching anybody. And there was one time where I saw him, barely be able to bring down Melvin Gordon. But, his ability to cover enough ground to really cover for the linebackers on those rushes, not promising.
Yeah, they really missed Earl in that game. That was the first time you really missed that. You saw that absence. And Evan mentioned one more thing in the chat. We'll end the show on this. Score predictions against the Rams. They're on the road in LA. LA just had their first loss of the season. I don't know if that helps Seattle or hurts Seattle. They're now 8-1. Brian, you've been predicting a win for a while. So do you want to?
Well, I mean, to me, a lot of this has to do with the injury situation. I think DJ Fluker is the spirit animal for this team, and I don't know if he's going to play. I would guess he's not going to play. I would guess Chris Carson's not going to play. I would guess Bradley McDougald's not going to play. And this team is not good enough to be down those quality of players against probably a lot of teams, let alone, one of the most talented teams in the NFL. So, I actually really liked their chances, when at least Fluker and Carson were in there. I thought they'd have something to do. But without those two, I think the Rams probably win this game rather comfortably. I guess I'll go with like 35 to 17.
Whew.
I'll second this 35, but I think it's probably going to be more like 24, 27, something like that. I could see kind of a similar deal to the Chargers game, or maybe they kind of pull it close at the end, but yeah, I don't know. It gives me pause because they played them so much better in Seattle than I thought they would. But I don't know that they can repeat that.
I'm going to go 30-27 Seahawks because football is stupid. It's random and it's dumb. So the Seahawks are going to win on Sunday.
Well, you're going 35-27 Seahawks win?
21.
You said 30-27, I thought you said.
30-27 Seahawks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna echo Brian and Nathan. I'm thinking 34-20. I think Seattle can get some big plays against Marcus Peters. Everyone has David Moore. That's a hell of a matchup for him. But I think the Rams are going to be a little pissed based on how Seattle played them, how physically they knocked them around a little bit, and kind of Fluker's comments after the game. I think that probably irked them a little bit. And I just don't think Seattle has the defensive personnel to slow down. You really need a pass rush to slow down Goff. And I just don't see, without their personnel issues right now on offense and their defensive issues, I don't see how this is a game. But I said that last time, and Seattle probably should have won that game. So hopefully,
if Joey Hunt is playing right guard, though, Russell Wilson may not survive. Like he might just be a stain on the field. I don't have any faith in Joey Hunt's ability to handle Sue, let alone Aaron Donald.
Yeah, and Posick struggled badly against him too.
Yeah.
Just be aware, guys. We may be learning that Brandon Marshall was a lot more important to this team than we realized.
What are they, 0-1 without him?
They're 0-1, man. Like they were on a roll, and then he's gone, and look what's happening.
Can't argue with those stats.
All right, Jeff.
All right. Again, I'd like to thank everyone who was on earlier. I know we had our technical delay to start, but we ended up getting a good show in. We had Brian come on late and covered all sorts of issues. And again, I want to thank everyone who was patient and stuck around with us. And again, subscribe to the channel. Brian will tell you to join Patreon. Hawkblogger's done great stuff on there.
I have one final note. One final note for all of the viewers still listening on this. Go to Shake Shack in Seattle. It is amazing, and it is way better than Dick's. Best burger joint in Seattle.
I have one more thing. Michael Dixon had a fucking awesome game. He was great.
That was sadly how I thought the season would go. Like, the offense would be unbearable, unwatchable. The defense would suck. Couldn't get any pass rusher, and the best player to watch would be the punter. That was the first time that actually that script, probably since week 1 or 2, happened.
That's my
I don't have one more thing. So,
all right. Thanks again this week. We'll be back next week, hopefully talking about a Seahawks win. Evan can rub it all in our faces, and highly unlikely, but well, who knows with this team? Every game has gone very differently than most of us has predicted, other than Nathan. But
no, my streak is over. I have one more thing. I regret to inform everyone that my streak is over. Wait, no, that happened. Did that happen a while ago? That happened with the Lions game, but I wasn't on last week. So, official announcement: I am no longer perfect on the season.
We knew that.
Well,
people don't change, Nathan.
You're right. I'm very, very frequently right, but not quite perfect. So,
all right. Good night, all.